guys, it's Tiara Jasmine Fielding, and you're listening to Broadway Babe 2000. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. This week we have a special guest. He was most recently seen in Beautiful on Broadway, or Jersey Boys in the national tour, or at New World Stages. I want to thank him so much for joining me, Cory Jeacoma. Hi, Cory.
Good to hear from you. How are you, Cory?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I want to thank you so much for joining. I mean, this past couple months have been really crazy. And yeah, how has your transition been from being in the city? I assume you're home now?
Yeah. Well, so when, because my girlfriend Bethany is in Diana, the musical, the Princess Diana Broadway show that isn't quite open yet, but they had previews and
I saw it.
It's such a great show, and they're sort of lost in limbo right now. It's weird, but they have promised to be opening back up whenever the pigs fly. As soon as Broadway shut down, we kind of had no reason to be in the city. I had finished Beautiful in November, and we can talk about it a little bit later. But I'm doing a TV show now. That I had finished all of my episodes. And so then I was sort of just like sitting around waiting for the next gig. And I had just auditioned for a bunch of stuff. I was in finals for Hadestown and all this. And then all of a sudden, everything shut down. And we were like, well, I might as well go. So we went to Pennsylvania because Beth's family's in Pennsylvania. And then we were here for like 5 days and things started getting worse. And we were like, you know what? We might as well like make the most of it. My family's in Florida. And so we were like, let's go to Florida. So we went to Florida. We were there for the first 2 months of quarantine. And as you can see, I got nice and crispy in the sun. And then about 2 months in, my family started driving me crazy. So we figured, why not go back to Pennsylvania until her family drives us crazy? And then we'll figure it out from there.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's been so beautiful out these past couple of months, thankfully, so we can all go outside and adventure. But it's really amazing. And I actually saw Diana like the second week it came out, and tell Bethany I loved it. It was awesome. But
I will. I'll let her know.
But so how have you been dealing with the stress of the unknown, I guess, in this time? Because you said you were filming a TV show and you had a bunch of things going on. So it looks like there's things coming for you in the future, but how are you dealing with that?
It's interesting because I don't know if it's just my personality or the way that I look at things or just that I'm, I don't care as much. I don't know what it is, but I'm not so worried because I'm finding a lot of solace in the fact that we're all going through it together. It would be one thing if, one person in the industry was booking all of the jobs and I was just sitting here twiddling my thumbs. It's like we're all sort of at a standstill. So there's nothing we can do. So panicking about it isn't going to do anything. We need to leave it to the higher ups to figure it out because, I can be a freaking COVID specialist all I want, but I don't know as much as the next person. Mm-hmm. I could be like, well, I think they're doing this wrong or they're doing that wrong, but ultimately it's not going to do anything. So I might as well just make the most of the time that I have. And something that's been helping me a lot is thinking about the fact that we'll never have this much time again. So far we've had 2 months to just spend time with our families. I've been out of college for a few years now, but I haven't been in Florida for 2 months the way that I just was. I haven't spent that much time with my family in 7 years since I left for college. So it's sort of a blessing in many ways that I got to spend time with my brother who's going through college right now, with my mom and dad. And, I got social distance, glasses of wine with my grandparents that I don't get a lot of time with. So I'm looking at it very much like a blessing. I'm taking the time to work out like crazy and get my body to where I want it to be. Obviously, as you can see, I'm growing out what facial hair I do have, which isn't much. But, I'm just taking the time to do things that I wasn't able to do. I'm learning how to mix music on Pro Tools because I'm hoping to release an album later this year. And so I'm learning this, this sort of audio technique, and hopefully I can record some stuff and get some content out there for people to listen to, because I've been writing crazy.
Yeah, that's so awesome that you're using this time to really reflect on yourself and your family, and also create, because I know that's been a struggle for a lot of people. But you've been an artist your whole life, I assume. Do you want to talk about your upbringing and how you got into theater?
Oh, sure. It's funny. I got into theater sort of accidentally. I did a show, I started by doing the 5th grade talent show. And I don't even know how old I was in 5th grade, but whatever age I was like, I like singing. My mom always said that in the car she would have Barney playing or whatever, and I would sing a totally different song. I'd be like, Mom, you know that song that goes like, and she used to think it was crazy that I could sort of tune one song out and sing a totally different song. And so she always says that she knew that I was musical in some way. And so in 5th grade, I wanted to test it out. And there's a funny video of the talent show in 5th grade, where the woman hosting the talent show, she was like the arts teacher. She goes, 5th grader Cory Jeacoma wants to sing this song for you guys. And when asked why he wanted to do the talent show, his response was, I really like singing, and I want to see if people enjoy listening to me. So that was my sole reason of getting into it. And I sang Sugar Pie Honey Bunch, as any 5th grader does. And I remember just the rush of the audience. It was the first time I felt that, the electricity of being a live performer. And so I've been chasing that ever since. And from there, I was Baloo the Bear in the Jungle Book, and then did a whole bunch of stuff in school. And then my friends started applying to colleges, and they started getting scholarships for theater, sort of like these D1 athletes were getting around me. And I was like, wait, you can get a scholarship and go to school for this? All right, that's cool. And so then I started applying, and I got into a couple of schools. And to be honest, I wasn't a great student. And so this was like my chance. I was like, all right, I cracked the code. Let's do it. And so I start applying to all these schools, and then I get into Ithaca College and Pace University and SUNY Purchase. And I was like, okay, all right, this is it. And so then I'm going to school, and my friends start booking jobs. And there's something that, you can either look at it competitively, being like, oh man, he booked a job. Oh, he booked a job. Why aren't I booking? Or you can look at it like, wait, my friend booked it. There, it's almost like, points of separation. And, they were just one point of separation away from you. So that means you can do it too. So as soon as my friends started booking, I was like, oh, this is a real thing. It's tangible. I was like, all right. So then I started auditioning, and then my senior year, I got my equity card doing Legally Blonde at the Fulton Theater in Pennsylvania, which is a theater that I love and very much got my start at. Then I started doing, I started working the regional circuit. I did another show at the Fulton. Then I did Mamma Mia and Maine State Music Theater. And then in the middle of that contract, I booked my biggest job, which was the Jersey Boys National Tour. Mm-hmm. And then I rode that for a year. And then, of course, I'm starting to notice a trend. I finished my first year of Jersey Boys on tour, and then they announced that they were changing the contracts. So then I left that. And then they opened the off-Broadway company of it. So I did that for a year. And then I did a new show called My Very Own British Invasion at Big Mill, which was an out-of-town trial of sorts, directed by Jerry Mitchell, written by Rick Ellis. And that was a blast. It was my first time sort of creating a show. And then from there, I took a little bit of a break. I went and visited Bethany in California while she was doing the out-of-town for Diana. And it was nice to sort of separate myself from theater for a little while, because I was sort of losing my passion. I was sort of just doing the job, I guess. And so I re-energized that passion for it. And then I went back to the city, ready, hungry. And within my first few months, I booked Beautiful. And I was like, yeah, we did it. And then a month before I start rehearsal, they announced closing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, But I got to do it for the last 2 months, and it was a freaking dream.
Yeah, that sounds like a crazy time. What was it? How did you get Beautiful in the first place? Did you just go and audition, or were you in talks with them for a long time?
So it's funny. When I was doing Jersey Boys, the role I was playing was Bob Gaudio, who was the singer-songwriter. He was, he wasn't the singer. He was the songwriter of the group, and he wrote a ton of the hits. Big Girls Don't Cry, Walk Like a Man, Sherry. And one of the biggest tunes, Can't Take My Eyes Off of You. And so playing that role, a lot of my friends who were involved in theater were coming to see it, and they were like, dude, have you seen Beautiful? Because there's a role for you in it. Jerry Goffin, it's like the same thing as Bob. He's just, it's a little bit deeper, it's a little bit darker. And I'm very much like a grittier, I like the dirtier stuff. And so I could tap into that for sure. And so, but Beautiful was always that show, it was on Broadway for like 5 years or something like that. And so it was always that show. I was like, I'll get around to it. And I think that was a lot of people's mentality, which is why it closed, unfortunately. But people thought it wasn't going anywhere. So they were like, all right, I'll get around to it. So finally, I got the audition packet. Well, actually, on tour, when I was in Jersey Boys on tour, I got the packet for the Barry Mann understudy. And Barry Mann is this wailing tenor, and he's also supposed to be shorter, and Jared Spector originated the role. And so I was like, I don't know if this is me, and I don't know if I want to introduce myself to that team in that light. I would rather wait until they want to see a Jerry. But also, Jerry is a great track. He doesn't enter for the first 15 minutes of the show. He's got some sick, heavy scenes. He sings a few fun songs, and then he's sort of done. And he's sort of the villain, but you care for him. So someone would be stupid to leave the track. So no one was leaving. So I was waiting. And then finally, my agents sent me the audition. And it's funny, you can ask Bethany, my girlfriend. As soon as I got the audition, I was like, this is it, done. I got it. I'm going to play this role. I read the material. I worked on it just endlessly. And it's funny, people always talk about just knowing. And I walked into the room, and I had guys before me who had more credits than me, had more experience than me, were bigger names. And in my head, there was obviously the doubt that we all have, where it was like, no, he's going to get it. He's, he'll fill more seats or whatever it is. But something about it, I walked into that room, and the notes came out easier than they ever came out. I tapped into the scenes more, and I walked out of the room, and I was like, I think I might have just booked that. And then, my worry, Wharton, my anxiety came out the following few days because it was Memorial Day weekend. And so in my head, I'm like, they should have cast it by now. They should have cast it. They would have told me by now. And my girlfriend kept being like, Cory, no one is working this weekend. It is Memorial Day weekend. Relax. I remember at one point, like, practically crying on my couch, being like, I don't want to do this anymore. I hate this industry. I'll never work again, blah, blah, blah. And then I went home to Florida to surprise my brother for graduation. And as soon as I landed, I'm driving home, because I always love to drive as soon as I get to Florida, because I can't drive in New York. And I get a call from my agents right after I'm like annoyed with my mom, being like, how are the auditions? You get any jobs? This and that. And I'm like, no, Mom, no. And then I get a call, and I pull over because I knew. Because as soon as I answer the phone, they were on a conference call. And when they're on a conference call, it's them as a group being like, hey, we got good news for you. And so I pull over, and I'm shaking. My mom's screaming at the top of her lungs. It was the coolest.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. I mean, that was your Broadway debut, and that's such a great show because Carole King is such a legend. Did you get to meet her, or was she like...
I was so bummed.
No, but it was really an amazing show. And you're right, people didn't understand it as much, and it was really slow with its crowd coming towards it because I think people my generation or our generation would think that it's for our parents or people like that, but it's really a story for everyone. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it's a story. And, that's something that a lot of people see with Jersey Boys. All of these shows that are about these legends in the music industry, these titans that sort of created what we know today as music. People our age are like, no, it's for old people. It's for old people. But any good show has something for everybody. And not only that, but also shows like Jersey Boys, shows like Beautiful, have music that everyone knows. You whether it's a cover by someone else or whether it's a remix. I know my first introduction to Jersey Boys was there's a remix of the song Beggin' by Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. And I don't even know who it's by, but I remember listening to it as a kid. I had it on my freaking iPad or on my iPod. And then as I auditioned for the show, I was like, wait, I know that song. And, and with Beautiful, Natural Woman, Earth Move, all of these songs that you heard growing up, whether it be your parents, your grandparents, or on the radio, the songs. And so then seeing how they were created and seeing the troubles that they went through, because I think the connector of every show like that's a good show is that they're human and they have human qualities that we can all relate to.
Mm-hmm. And that's the really beautiful part about musical theater. You can find something in relation, in my opinion, to most of the shows that I see on the stage, which is just so amazing and makes me want to fall in love with it more and more, and probably the same for you.
Even bad shows, you're like, oh, I get it.
You're like that? Yeah, I think I could understand that one.
Yeah, you're like, I wouldn't say it like that, but like, yeah, I get it.
But when you booked Jersey Boys, what was that for you? What was that audition process? And how did you feel about the transition from the national tour to New World stages?
So I laughed because the audition process, once again, was me getting in my head. But it was almost funnier because I started the audition process in Pennsylvania when I was doing a job. I was doing Footloose. And I started getting auditions, and I had a couple callbacks. So I was taking the Amtrak back and forth from the city to Lancaster, which is like a 2.5-hour train ride.
Yeah.
And during the show, I would be going over the sides. And so one day on my way to like maybe my second callback, I'm in the bathroom of the Amtrak, and I drop my phone in the toilet. And so if you've been on the Amtrak, the toilets, they're not like a red. And so there's no flush. It's just a hole. And so my phone goes in there. And of course, I'm not going to reach into this dark abyss of a hole that you pee into. And so sorry for any listeners that are easily squeamish. So I'm going into the city blind without a phone. I only know when my appointment time is and where it is. So I don't know if, they've changed rooms. I don't know if, my agent's calling me being like, hey, they need to see you earlier or later, whatever. So I just go there. And then I have to go back to Pennsylvania without a phone. And so I go back to Pennsylvania and I get to my laptop, find out I have a callback. My callback is during a little break when I'm finishing that job, and then when I go to Maine for Mamma Mia. So in between that, I have another callback. I get a callback, and then my final callback is while I'm in Maine. So I rent a car, and I'm 21 at this point. And when you're 21 to rent a car, the insurance is through the roof. So it's like $250 freaking dollars to rent it for a day. So I'm like, all right, like it's worth it. It's worth it, Cory. So I do it, and then I go to the city. And Tiara, when I tell you I had the worst freaking audition of my life, so they had a work session with me the day before the final where the music director and the director work the scenes with you so that the actual director can see exactly what they want. And it's just whether or not they like the sort of frame of the person. And so I nailed the work session. Then the next morning I just didn't warm up enough or something. I couldn't get under my breath, but one thing that I am through and through is an actor. And so I sang the songs, and I could tell that the team was sort of disappointed. They were a little bummed. But then I acted the scenes, and I could see them sort of light up and be like, he's a good actor, but like he just can't sing it. The director and everyone, they leave. The the music supervisor comes out and he goes, Cory, can you stay for like 15 minutes? And I'm like, sure. All dejected and bummed, thinking that I bombed it. He brings me back in, but everyone left. It's just him and Mary Sugarman, the casting director. And I sing through the material again, and he's like, great, thank you, Cory. And I was like, what? Like, what? Why'd you make me do that? You know, everyone left. And then I go back to my rental car that cost me $250. And sure enough, I have 2 parking tickets. Not 1, but 2. And I'm like, it's comical. I'm like, this is just ridiculous.
Where did you park?
You know, that's the problem is I don't even know where I parked. I had never driven in the city. So I just like parked somewhere. I was like, yeah, that's a spot. I probably parked on a fire hydrant for all I know. And so then I get 2 parking tickets and I'm so bummed. And then I get in the car, I turn on the car, and the first song that plays is a Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons song. And instead of taking it as a sign, I took it as an omen. And I was like, great. This is the universe taunting me, basically. And then the next day I get back to Maine and I get a call from my agent that I booked the national tour. And so then sorry, that's a very long-winded
No,
answer.
you're good. It's entertaining.
Okay, good. As long as you're getting a good time. And so then I get back to Maine, I get the job, I go on tour for a year. It's the best year of my life. I met some of my best friends. Then we finished that tour and they announced they're going CETA and that the itinerary is going to be a little bit more rigorous. And so I felt it was time to step off and go back to the city and see what else is out there. And so I get back to the city and there are rumors that so when I booked the tour, in my head, I was like, this is my ticket to Broadway. I'll do the tour for a year, then do Jersey Boys on Broadway. A month into the tour, they announced Jersey Boys is closing on Broadway. So I'm like, great. And so then I get back to the city. There's talks that they're opening it off Broadway. So I send an email to the associate director who hired me for the tour. And I was like, hey, I would love to put my hat in the ring. And a couple months later, they had their cast and I was on it. And sure enough, I got to open it off Broadway, which was really cool because the tour and the Broadway production was this big mounted, it was a Broadway size show. But then, the Broadway house, I think, was like 1,500 seats. The touring houses, we were playing 3,000 seats. The biggest house we played was 7,000 seats in Kansas City, Missouri. Wow. So it was a much bigger stage. When we brought it off Broadway, the house was 500 seats. Mm-hmm. So we had to shrink it down, tear apart the set, shrink down the cast. So I think we went from like 18 players to 12. And the size of the band shrunk. And, so it was pretty much just putting it into a compressor and just going and just sucking a lot of the air out. But it was also cool because in a 3,000, 7,000 seat house, you're playing to the back wall. So it's almost like a cartoon version of the show. Whereas in the 500 seat house, it's much more intimate. And if you've seen Jersey Boys, you know that while it's got great music, Marshall Brickman and Rick Ellis wrote a fantastic book. And it's like an episode of The Sopranos with Frankie Valli music layered over it. And so you get to bite into the dialogue a little bit more and sort of feel what these guys were feeling during the time. And you don't have to schmack so much. You can sort of drop into the realism of it. And that was really cool.
Yeah, that sounds like an awesome experience. And I remember when we met, I was talking to you. We were on the Long Island Railroad, and we got into conversation. And then you said, "Oh, I'm in Jersey Boys off Broadway right now," and I was like, "Oh my God!" Like I'm talking to I was like so dumbfounded in that moment. I was like 16 years old. I was like starting to apply to colleges and stuff. And like looking at applying for musical theater and things like that. And I just remember I was like, oh my God, I'm talking to this guy. Like, this is so amazing.
Oh, cool. I'm glad you thought that because I'm just any other schmuck.
No, really. And I remember you and your girlfriend were saying how you went to Pace for musical theater and how she ran dance calls and stuff. And I had a friend the year before me who had just gotten into Pace, and I was like, oh my gosh, like maybe I should audition at Pace, maybe I should audition for like vocal performance somewhere, musical theater somewhere. And I just remember the conversation so vividly. And we spoke for a little while, and then I remember you got up and got off the train, and
saved my life.
Yeah. You were going to Long Island to visit, why were you going to Long Island again?
Yeah,
your grandma.
My grandma's out on Long Island. And so for everybody listening, Tiara literally saved me so much time, stress, money, everything. Because, like I said a little bit, I'm such an idiot. I was getting off the train after we had this great conversation. I'm like, see you guys later. And I get off the train, and the Long Island Railroad has this like bell that dings when they're closing the door. And I remember getting off the train, and we're walking towards the exit, and I realize I forgot my backpack. And I go sprinting back, and I hear the bells ringing. It's like ding, ding. And I'm like, no, I'm never going to make it. And if I did make it, then I was going to get trapped on the train and have to go to like Mineola and go an extra stop. And so as I'm running up to the train, like full sprint, I see Tiara come out with my backpack, and she's like, you forgot this. And it was like, you were a guardian angel. You came to save me so much time and energy, because I would have just been spending, the next few days.
I was like, what if his laptop, what if his dance shoes are in there? Oh no.
You know what? That's the biggest compliment you could have given me, because I am far from a dancer. So thank you for thinking I had dance shoes.
But yeah, I just remember that whole interaction, and I was like, wow, this kid is so nice. You and your girlfriend were so sweet. I felt it in my bones that I would see you on the stage again soon. And then when I heard you were in Beautiful, I was like, that's so amazing. That's so full circle. And it's funny because the characters do really relate to each other in the sense where they're kind of from that, the type of songs you would hear out of Johnny Rockets, if you know what that is, or something like that.
Oh yeah, sure do.
But yeah, I just find that so fascinating. And you said you're going into TV. So let's talk a little bit about that, if you're allowed to, at least. I mean, spoilers, I don't know.
Well, I can't talk too much to the character because that'll be a spoiler. But I can say that I am going to be on, well, hopefully they don't edit me out of every episode. But I'll be on Ghost, which is a spinoff of Power on Stars. Mm-hmm. And the role that I'm playing it's fun, and he gets into some trouble, and he makes a fool out of himself, and it's and the cast is just unreal, and the storyline's awesome, and it sticks true to the Power universe that people grew to love over the course of 6.5 seasons. And you don't have to watch Power to watch Ghost. That's the nice thing is if you watch Power, you'll understand it a lot more, and you'll have feelings about the characters. But this spinoff is sort of its own entity, and they're doing a few more spinoffs. Raising Kanan, which is about 50 Cent's character, and they're doing Tate's character and Tommy's character. They're getting their own spinoffs, but this is about the son. And I think you'll really enjoy it. I can't talk much about it.
I'll have to watch Ghost. But that's so awesome. What was that transition for you like? Because acting in front of a camera is obviously very different from acting live on stage.
Yeah, it's funny. It's easier in some ways, harder in others. For me, the hardest part was trying less, I guess you could say, because on stage, it's you got to play to the back wall, whereas on camera, you literally lift your eyebrow a little bit and you look like you're making the biggest shocked face in the world. And as just a normal human, Cory, I'm a very big illustrative person. As you can see from this chat, I talk a lot with my hands. I'm Italian. I make big facial expressions and everything. Whereas on camera, if someone walks past you and you look just with your eyes, you don't have to turn your whole head because that's going to look ridiculous on camera. So the more grounded in realism, and also the volume you're talking at, right now, this would be way too loud on camera. Whereas on camera, if you just like drop down and you sort of like mumble your words, they're going to pick everything up because they have a microphone. And so, figuring out that transition was hard for me. But in many ways, it was easier because you do the scene maybe 5 or 6 times, and then you're done with it forever. You never have to touch it again. Whereas I'm used to doing it 8 times a week, and I had just gotten off Beautiful, where I had to have these mental breakdowns and be hospitalized 8 times a week, and it's exhausting. And so I watched an interview with Brad Pitt and Adam Sandler, and they talk about how, you have a really intense scene that you're approaching, and you're like, oh man, this is going to be really hard. And then you spend the day on it, and then you're done, and it's the hardest day of your life. And I'm like, dude, we have to do that 8 times a week on Broadway. So in many ways it's harder, in many ways it's easier, but there's nothing like the energy you get from an audience with live theater.
Yeah, and I bet you're looking forward to that. What are you looking forward to most when quarantine gets lifted and when things start to get back to this new normal?
Yeah, I'm excited for people to get the entertainment that they want. We've seen in history some of the highest, you look at ticket sales, not for the sake of the money of it, but to see what attracts the most people. And ticket sales were so high after these national tragedies. I hate to say it, but 9/11 brought a lot of people into audiences because they wanted something to get their mind off of everything. They wanted this escapism. And also, I think that the craft changes a lot. During certain times in history, you see darker pieces because people want to feel. During tragedy, they want something happy. So you sort of see this trend in the entertainment industry of what people want to see. And so I'm excited to see what comes out of it. You're seeing a lot of web series come out right now because it's the only way they can get actors to film because everyone's quarantined. So a lot of web series are coming out. I'm curious to see what happens over the next year because right now, so TV, for instance, films about a year in advance. So in February of next year, we should be seeing what we would be filming right now. So I'm curious if we're just going to do reruns for the next year and then we'll get back to, newer stuff. But it's hard to make new content right now. So I'm curious to see how we all adapt to this new way of living temporarily, because we're going to get back to normal, and it's all about adapting to the norm of right now. I wouldn't call it the new norm because that makes it seem like it's never going to end. I would say it's the now norm. It's just for right now. And we're going to come out of this and we're going to get back to making incredible art and people are going to get back into theaters and want to see a little bit of themselves in what we do. And it's going to take time, because ultimately to do what we do, finances and we need investors and all that sort of stuff. And people can't swing that right now. So I think we're going to see a change in the way art is made. We might go back to sort of bare bones, sort of structure of shows, like you look back at shows like The Fantastics, and that show was pretty much done with just like a box, with a toy box, you look at these bare bones productions, what was it just a few years ago, Fiasco's production of Into the Woods, where it was like the actors played the instruments and they did it like they were in a little attic. And, they didn't have these big costumes. The wolf was literally just a taxidermy wolf that he carried around, So I think it's going to stretch us, which will be cool.
It's going to be very experimental. I can feel it already. Yeah. I'll be playing a wall or something.
That's it. And look, I will take the wall. I'll take whatever I can get.
As long as you're on the stage. But I want to thank
That's
you
right.
so much for joining me. Do you have any last words or anything you want to plug? Anything exciting going on before we say our goodbyes?
Just thank you for having me. You know,
Of
this was
course.
awesome. It was nice to talk to you about what we love, and yeah, I guess to plug a little bit, I'll be dropping some singles of original music that I've been working on throughout the next few weeks. You know, just as we're quarantined, just to give you something to tap your toes to. So that, and also keep an eye out for when Ghost is dropped. You'll see a familiar face in a few of the episodes, and just, you know, try to stay sane, try to be productive. You don't have to be productive, but try to make the most of this time, because we'll never have this much time again.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Cory. I'll talk to you guys next week.
And be on the lookout for a special episode at the end of this week featuring my friends from home. Bye.